that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and Tom Fennell, him.
In the flesh.
In the flesh.
Wearing my winter coat, and I think I'm going to leave it on for a little while. I might take it off.
It's actually not too cold in this room, but you notice I'm still wearing my scarf.
Well, it got kind of chilly last night.
It did, a little chilly, yeah.
For a change, we've had this warm fall, and all of a sudden the curtain dropped.
Yes, but I will say the ice worms have not come out of the glaciers yet to chirp.
The what?
It's an old story. I think it was Fairbanks, Alaska. The telegraph lines got cut, so the local newspapers didn't know what to print.
Yeah.
Because there was no news from outside the world, so they printed stories like a story about it being so cold that the ice worms had come out of the glaciers and were chirping, and their chirping was keeping people awake. And they had groups of people going out into the countryside to find ice worms, which they brought back and put into cocktails for the local bars. Anyway, it
sounds pretty ridiculous.
It was pretty ridiculous. Anyway, we are here for Energy Week number 345, or 345th edition. And if you like Energy Week, and even if you don't, you can contribute a little to its support, because we need a little support. Not much.
We don't need much.
No, not a whole lot. The way you do that is by going to BrattleboroTV.org, and you go to the bottom of the screen, and there's a thing that says Support Local Television, and you click on that, and then you either use PayPal or some sort of credit card or debit card to donate scads of money, and at least $1.
We only need about $12, right?
No, we need about 110.
But we need that much?
Yeah, we haven't had any contributions for several weeks.
How did it get so high?
It started at 480.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a lot of donations. This is a show that is watched by poor people, and a few other people. Anyway, when you donate, put in the comments a little bit below the place where you put in the amount on that screen that this is for support of Energy Week. And was there something else? Oh, I know. I have to tell everybody how we get these stories. I get up and I go to the internet and I find stories every day, and I put them at put a synopsis of each and a link to the original at my blog, geoharvey.com, and I put up 10 to 15 each day. Most days I put up 15. Occasionally I'll put up 11 or 13, but it's almost always, not always, but it's almost always an odd number between 10 and 15.
Okay.
Almost never 10. Anyway, we are starting on November 7th, and if you go to
Which is a Thursday, by the way.
Yes, absolutely, which was a week ago today being the 14th. And if you go to geoharvey.com, GeoHarvey, and click on the 7th on the calendar, you'd find the stories we have from that date. And you have something to say, I'll bet.
Well, we pick, for this show, like the best of the blog.
The best of the internet.
So we usually get about three stories from each day.
Yeah.
And some of these things are well worth reading.
And some of them are not.
Some are not, obviously. And in order to do what I do, I have to read them.
Yes.
So if I catch some of them that are particularly interesting, I'll try and remember to mention it to you.
I have.
Something just
I have
happened
to tell
to my
you,
computer here. Just
Tom
went
does
out.
not always just remember. He keeps notes, which is a memory aid that I think everybody should use, and I don't.
Well, we got one coming up. We got a picture coming up.
We have a picture. In fact, the picture is right there. You can just click on it and bring it up.
See if I can bring it up.
There you go. Don't
Amazing.
double click. There you go.
Look at that blade.
That is a wind turbine blade, and if you look just to the right of the center of the picture down near the bottom, you'll see two men standing there.
It's a big blade.
That's a big blade. It's as long as a football field with the end zones and then some.
I had the length of that. It's 107 meters. I think that's about 350 feet.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah,
I thought I
it's
wrote
close
it down,
enough.
but
Yeah.
in any case, the title says, Massive Wind Turbine Blade Arrives at Massachusetts for Testing.
I was surprised by this article because I didn't know that they were sending one to Massachusetts. I knew
Well, we got a little later. We're going to touch base on this
Yeah.
article, on this
same
same
yeah.
theme. And I was wondering, I thought this thing's operating. How come they got a
They
blade?
have one operating in Rotterdam, and they
Yeah.
have one that they're going to test in the UK.
That's exactly
now
what's
they're
happening.
testing one in
another one in Massachusetts. Why? Because the testing facility is there.
Yeah. Okay, you have read the title. This is from CNBC, and I will read my synopsis. A 107-meter-long wind turbine blade was moved to the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center's Wind Technology Testing Center for testing. Remarkable that they're using that center for testing. The blade, designed to be used on one of GE Renewable Energy's Haliade X 12-megawatt offshore wind turbines, is to be subjected to a series of fatigue tests. And
Well, GE's serious about this Haliade.
oh, they sure are. There, I thought about this, and I thought about, there's a picture of a nacelle later on in this thing, and the nacelle went to the UK, and they're talking about the nacelle being the size of 6 double-decker buses.
6 of them.
6 of them.
The biggest one I've seen was 4.
Double-decker.
Double-deck buses.
Yeah, and I looked at these 2 articles, and I thought, it's not just that wind energy is better offshore that is causing these huge turbines to be built for offshore wind farms. It's because you don't need to do any road transportation for them.
No, they're
These
shipping
things
by
would be
sea.
really hard to transport by road.
Well, we saw a trailer that was specifically made
Yes.
to carry these blades.
Yes.
And the trailer was about 200 feet long
Yes.
with a gazillion wheels.
It was actually a gazillion and 2.
Was it? You counted
Yeah,
them.
they had 2 spares.
Well, a
Okay.
little takeaway from here. As technology develops, the size of wind turbines is increasing.
Yes, it
We've
is.
observed that. At 850 feet, this one is currently the world's largest.
Yes.
Okay? The blade was transported to the testing facility via ship.
By a ship. That's
Yep.
how you move things when they're this big.
Absolutely.
And a big crane. Okay.
We got another one coming across, and this is interesting.
Yes, it is. This is from CNN.
Investors are dumping oil, so why would anyone buy Saudi Aramco? And that's a very good question to ask.
Demand growth for crude oil is slowing, which is an inconvenient truth for bankers pitching the Saudi Aramco IPO at a valuation of up to $2 trillion. Institutional investors are under growing pressure to ditch oil assets they already own, and the investment case for Aramco seems weak.
Well, there's a 2-minute video worth watching on this article from
Yep.
CNN. And a little bit of the background on Aramco. When I was living in Saudi Arabia, Aramco was owned by 7 American oil companies, or 7 worldwide, because Shell was involved.
Yes.
Okay, and they sold out to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And it's a joint venture now. It's partly owned by the royal family. It's partly owned by the government, which is the royal family.
Well,
Okay, and now they're trying to get rid of it, or at least they want to get some cash.
Yes.
What they need cash for, I don't know. But
To build wind farms and solar farms.
well, it would make sense.
Yeah,
it would
well,
make sense for us to do
I
that.
shouldn't say that definitively because
Well,
I don't
right
know.
now they're sitting on the world's largest supply of oil.
Okay.
The Saudi Arabian untouched oil is still the world's largest.
Wow.
And with the price of oil going down and with renewables coming up, they're caught in a bind.
And they're going to be caught in a worse bind if the price of oil goes up because then they're going to be competing against cheaper renewables. They're in a real big bind.
Well, Saudi Arabia's state oil monopoly makes more money than any other company on earth.
Really?
That's what the article said.
Wow.
But low oil prices, the climate crisis, and geopolitical risk could deter investors from buying into the partial privatization of Saudi Aramco.
Yeah.
And it very well could.
It could indeed. And
could
as you
squash the
say
whole-
that, I
whole
think about
thing.
the fact that, the Russians are being particularly problematical for Americans right now, and their income.
They do that well, don't they?
Yeah, they're very good at it. Their income is 65% from fossil fuels.
Is it really?
I'm talking about foreign trade
government.
here.
Yeah, government
So,
income.
as fossil fuels dry up, which I think they will, Russia's going to be in deep trouble.
I guess the bulk of their foreign trade income is from oil.
Yeah,
They're selling oil all
and
over
gas.
Europe.
Oil and gas. Okay.
Well, we got another interesting one coming up here.
We
This
do.
is
There's a
interesting
picture
too. Let
of
me get
fracking.
the picture up.
How fracking works.
Frack you.
Not nice, Tom. I'm going to scold you.
This is a schematic of fracking. We'll take a quick look at it.
Yeah, the thing on top there is the top of a piece of ground, and then what you got below it is chunks of geology, layers of different kinds of rocks and stuff, and they drill through all that until they get to the point where they're in a layer that they can frack, which is hydraulic fracturing, and they drill sideways through that so they don't leave the layer, and periodically they put the whole thing under pressure so that the rocks will crack, and then they pump in sludge and sand and slippery things and all
Magic liquids.
magic liquids, things that they don't have to tell us.
No, they're trade secrets.
It's a trade secret.
If we
They
found
can
out about
put
it, they
right
wouldn't let
under
them
our,
do it.
Yeah, they put it under our feet and a little ways under our wells, and they claim that none of this makes it to the surface, despite any evidence to the contrary.
Well, first of all, one thing I was surprised is how deep the fracking is.
Oh,
They go way down to about 1,000 feet.
okay.
Fracking, I thought it occurred much closer to the surface. And
What do you got for a title? This is from Clean
natural
Technica.
gas fracking boom turns bust for a big fracker.
Okay, this is from Clean Technica, and the big fracker here is Chesapeake Energy. And just before the show, I went online to find out a little bit about Chesapeake Energy. It was listed as the 309th company in
In the world.
in the S&P 500.
Okay.
So this is a big company. Chesapeake Energy was one of the first to take advantage of the natural gas fracking free-for-all that sparked last year when the Trump administration opened up more public lands for drilling. Now Chesapeake is blaming the supply glut for its current predicament, which is pretty bad.
Well, quick takeaway, by 2012, gas prices were going through the floor
Yeah,
and drilling activity was becoming unsustainable.
yeah,
It's economics, guys.
it was, yes. And what these people are doing is they're losing a lot of money. And it's interesting to me, Chesapeake Energy was sold, I think it was last February, for $4 billion worth of cash and stock. Now, that means that somebody put a lot of money into this organization less than a year ago.
And they're going to get burnt.
They're going to get burnt. And it also means that somebody made a bunch of money by selling this, and they had a good reason to get out of that industry.
They had a good Ouija board.
They had a good Ouija board, that's right. Okay, we are up to Friday, November 8th.
This is an interesting, very interesting article.
It comes from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory.
Go with the flow. Scientists design better batteries for a renewable energy grid.
Berkeley lab researchers developed a versatile yet affordable polymer flow battery membrane that can be used to make possible long-lasting and low-cost grid batteries based solely on readily available materials such as zinc, iron, and water.
This is big news, actually.
Actually, it is. The flow batteries we've talked about many, many times.
Oh, yeah. And they can be big.
They can be big, and they can
big, big.
Big. They can hold huge amounts of energy. But the part of the problem with them was that they were expensive, even compared to lithium-ion batteries. And
this is reducing the cost of those batteries enormously.
And what that means, in turn, is that the reason they cost a lot of money was partly because they were using metals like vanadium. And
They were very specialized parts
Right.
of the device.
now you'll notice that zinc, iron, and water are things that people know about. Vanadium,
They're kinda cheap.
people might not know about vanadium. I remember vanadium from when I was a child. My mother had a set of steak knives that were made of vanadium, and they had vanadium engraved on the side, and I couldn't figure out what it was, so I looked it up. Later on, when I was working in chemical factories, I handled vanadium, but not as much as I handled gadolinium. Figure that out.
Well, the backstory here, of course, is that renewables can't always be counted on to generate electricity when you need it.
Right.
But renewables and storage make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
When the sun's shining, you make energy and you put it in a big battery and use it at
Of
night.
some kinds.
Of some sort.
Which could
and this
be-
is a very large battery.
Yeah, and a big battery include things like
And we're talking about
rail cars
two
going
little
up
lakes
mountains.
here or something like.
Yes.
Yeah, we saw rail cars, right?
Okay, our next item, which is from Renew Economy, has a graph that I will apologize
let's-
for
let's-
because
let's
it's low
put the-
resolution.
let's
I
put the
did
graph
look
up here.
for a better graph,
There
but
wasn't a better one.
there wasn't one that I could find. This is from Lazard. The original is a PDF file. This graph was taken by somebody at the place Renew Economy, and unfortunately, it's a little hard to read because it's low resolution.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, we have conventional electric resources in the 4 bottom darker blue. The 4 top lighter blue has renewable energy.
So this is the cost of energy.
This is the wholesale cost of energy, including whatever subsidies are involved, except for, in the case of nuclear, it does not include the potential cost of Price-Anderson or the cost of dealing with waste.
That's neat.
Well, they get special consideration because they shine in the dark.
So
Anyway.
we're seeing those bars represent a
Right.
range.
That's right. And there are a few things that have to be mentioned here. If you look at that, that is $66 to $152 in the coal bar, which is the second from the bottom. And the bottom one is 44 to 68, which is combined cycle natural gas, which means that in general, you can expect that the price of a baseload natural gas plant, the electricity will almost always be lower than the cost of electricity from a coal burning plant, which is why natural gas has been beating out coal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, here's the thing.
But you take a look up there in the top.
Yes,
Solar PV.
solar PV.
Holy cow.
By golly, it looks
And
like
it's getting cheaper.
Yes, solar PV is almost always cheaper than combined cycle natural gas. And wind power is potentially
too.
very cheaper, usually cheaper than combined cycle natural gas. And when you throw on that battery, they don't necessarily get more expensive than natural gas.
They do, but it's not by much.
Yeah.
Really not
And
by much.
Natural gas is dependent on a resource that's limited, so the price is going to go up. Solar and wind are on a technology price curve, which means their prices
Their price is gonna go down.
continue to
We've
go
talked
down.
about that.
We are at or past the tipping point, and last week I had a story on about how the applications, the announcements, whatever, of expected new natural gas generating capacity is declining on a monthly
Absolutely.
basis.
Absolutely.
And it dropped in the
world
last
is changing,
yeah,
guys.
it dropped in the last 2 years by almost 40%. And this is an ongoing trend. Now, one other thing that I'd like to point out, Tom, could you put that back up?
I just did.
The 2 top ones are a little bit unfair, or I should say they really don't match, because these are the wholesale prices of electricity that people are getting by these are
The equivalent of the wholesale price.
but the thing is, a person who's getting solar power, or a company that's getting solar power, well, you'll see that the top one rooftop residential, 151 to 242, which is the equivalent of 15 to 24 cents per kilowatt hour. In some parts of the United States, 15 cents per kilowatt hour is significantly below the cost of whole retail residential electricity.
Not in Vermont.
Well, I'm
It's about
paying more
equal
than
to it.
15.
Yeah, you're getting special
Well,
cow power,
I
right?
am, but
Yeah.
you know, it's going up, and the cost of renewable energy in those two instances is high, but it is.
But these people are using it themselves.
That's right.
So it's a
That's
bonus.
right. So it really is not a fair representation.
No,
it's kind of
they're-
apples and oranges.
There's other things going on. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
paying anything for their power.
Yes, that's right. How much would you pay for free power? Okay.
Yeah, what
Should
happened
we
to
move
my
on, Tom?
computer here?
What happened to your computer?
Well, it came back. I guess it just fell asleep.
Actually, that computer is designed to fall asleep, and I reinstalled the operating system about 2 weeks ago, and I should go in and tell it.
Just
not
a
to-
matter of clicking and it
tell-
comes back on.
Yeah, tell it not to
Well,
do
we're
that.
going to get back to Heliod.
Yes, we are, and this is from Renews.
Heliod X starts spinning. Now, we just saw one of their blades.
We
How
did
can it
indeed.
start spinning with their blade in Massachusetts? But we're talking about more blades. They're
Yes,
making
we are.
more blades, and it looks like GE's planning on selling a lot of these things.
They want to sell as many as they can sell.
Duh.
Duh. GE Renewable Energy's 12 megawatt Haliade X offshore wind turbine has started turning to generate first power. The turbine installed in Rotterdam will basically at the edge of the water has started turning to generate. Will now progress to the testing phase, said the manufacturer. During testing, it will
Different types of measurements.
Wow.
We left those words out.
different types of measurements.
Will be carried.
Okay.
I'll read it.
All right, go
Will
ahead.
be carried out to obtain a type certificate for the Heliod X in 2020.
Right.
So they're trying. They've sold a few of these things already, but they're trying to get them
Well,
certified.
they've sold a bunch of them.
Oh yeah, I'm
But
just
they
going to
have
say
to
that.
get them certified to put them in.
They've been selected for the 120 megawatt skipjack, was small,
Yeah.
and 1,100 megawatt ocean wind projects in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as well as in the 3,600 megawatt Dogger Bank farm in the U.K.
They've got a bunch of these things that are scheduled.
They've got
to go
orders
in.
for these already.
Yeah. And they haven't finished testing, and they will have their testing certificate, they hope, in 2020.
Well, we got an interesting one coming up. We got a,
Okay, we're up
Yeah.
to Saturday, November 9th.
and here's a picture. This is
I get a kick out of this.
yeah.
This
It's a
is fun.
blimp.
It's a blimp. That's right.
that's the HAV, Hybrid Air Vehicles, Airlander, and it's a blimp.
Yep, and this is from BBC.
You know, when I was a kid, where we lived, for some reason, every morning while we're eating breakfast, going to school, a blimp went by.
Really?
I don't know where it was coming from.
I'll bet
know
it
where
was a Navy blimp.
It wasn't Navy, no.
You sure?
Well, it wasn't marked.
Oh, it wasn't
And the
marked. It
Navy
was
blimps are marked.
It was a secret blimp, and they were hoping nobody'd see it.
But it was kind of a big thing. Where's the blimp this morning?
You know, yeah, right. I am told that the reason why these things are called blimps is because somebody really early on, kind of walking by one, kind of popped his finger against it, and it went blimp. I've
That makes
actually
as
read
much
that.
sense as
Anyway, this
anything.
is. Do you have a title for
I
this?
do. How airships could return to our crowded skies.
The Airlander was created by Hybrid Air Vehicles, founded in 2007. Hybrid airships emit a fraction of the pollution of conventional aircraft. Now, HAV has been given over £1 million, which is $1.3 million, by the UK government and industry to develop all-electric propulsion producing zero pollution.
That's a natural for these guys.
Oh yeah, and you
Natural.
know these lighter than airships, the blimps and the zeppelins and so forth, were kind of renowned during the 1930s when they were using for passenger transportation as very comfortable ways to travel.
Well, they had a different thing then. They had these things called dirigibles.
Yes,
A blimp is just a big gas bag.
yes,
But the dirigibles had a framework, and they were big.
and they were big.
And unfortunately, one of them blew up in New Jersey, called the Hindenburg.
Yes.
And it scared the bejesus out of everybody, because
Oh,
the industry stopped.
and you know what they were using for
Hydrogen.
Yeah, but they were
And it
using
burns,
hydrogen
guys.
for the gas, and it burns. But what do you suppose they were using for the framework?
I would have figured steel.
Magnesium.
Okay, that makes sense.
Have
That
you
makes
ever
sense, 'cause
seen
it's light.
magnesium burn?
Yes, it can burn.
Unbelievable.
And it did.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what I was going to say. Airships lost out to conventional aircraft after a series of disastrous crashes
Yeah.
in the 1930s. And
Yeah.
the Hindenburg crash was famous.
Yep.
It was very spectacular.
And if you want to see what these things look like a little bit, you get a flavor for them from the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, there's a point where Indiana Jones and his father escape from Germany on a blimp. I'm sorry, on a dirigible.
How about that?
Yeah, and the dirigible is carrying an airplane to and they have to get off the dirigible, so they escape to the airplane.
To the airplane.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this Airlander is enormous. It's not a dirigible. It's a blimp.
It's a blimp.
Great big gas bag.
It's a big gas bag.
And it will be the first airship to fly to the North Pole since 1928.
Wow.
And it's going to carry tourists on an $80,000 luxury trip
Yeah, well,
rather than explorers. $80,000 bucks, boy.
$80,000 to go to the North Pole.
Just to go.
Let me ask you a question, Tom. Climate change. Will they be able to find the North Pole?
That's a good question.
They will. They'll have GPS. Okay. That was from BBC, and our
Well,
next...
there's a little quicker takeaway
Oh,
here.
okay, go ahead.
Airlander expects there to be about 150 of these airships floating around the world in 10 years.
150.
150 of these
I wouldn't
guys.
be surprised if there were more than that.
I wouldn't either.
I don't know how long it would take an airship like this to get from, say, Boston to London. But
I don't think you'd use it for that. They go slowly.
They do. But
It'd be good for getting from Boston to New York.
yeah, but I think that even going across the ocean, they might be really good. I mean, they
It'll take
they
you
can
about
put
3 or
beds.
4 days.
No, they wouldn't take that long, I don't think. Anyway, our next item is from Newsmax.
It is that.
Yes.
Fed, according to the Fed, $500 billion in losses show economic threats of climate change.
Now, I want to point out
This is significant.
this article and the one that follows it are both about the Fed, the United States
Okay.
Federal Reserve. There were a lot of articles on the 9th of November about the Fed, and I had links to 3 of them, but I only used 2 for the show. A Fed official, this is from Newsmax, a Fed official warned risk managers not to ignore climate change. Quote, the U.S. economy has experienced more than $500 billion of direct losses over the last 5 years due to climate and weather-related events. End quote. Federal Reserve Bank of New York Executive Vice President Kevin Steros said. Now, honestly, I think they're underestimating this badly.
Well, they identified 2 types of risk.
Right.
Okay. One is physical risk, as climate-related changes disrupt business operations.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is a transition risk resulting from the shift toward a lower carbon economy.
Yeah.
This
and-
is going to affect people who have nothing to do
yeah.
with this business.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is going to affect the
stock,
local
stock prices, the cost of operations.
The guy who owns the local gas station.
Absolutely.
And honestly, I could see that going into $500 billion a year.
Well, that's just exactly what they're saying.
Well, they're saying it has experienced $500 billion in the last 5 years.
It's going to go higher.
It's going to get worse. Maybe we should go to the next
Yeah, let's go.
picture.
Let's put this lady up.
Yes.
She's got an important job, this lady.
Yes, she does. She's the Fed governor.
That's an important job.
It is. She makes more money than I do.
She doesn't make more than I do, though.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
She might make $1 a year. I don't know. Anyway,
Fed
yeah.
sees climate change shaping economy and policy. This is following up on what we just said.
Right. This is from Reuters UK. Federal Reserve Governor Lael Brainerd said the Fed will need to look at how to keep banks and the financial system resilient amid risks from extreme weather, high temperatures, rising seas, and other effects of increasing levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Now, the third article, which I did not schedule for this show, basically says the Fed, and it's an extension of this, which is why I put this in instead of not it. The Fed is warning that entire regions of the United States within 10 years will not have a possibility of 30-year mortgages. People
Wow.
will not be able to get 30-year mortgages.
Because they can't get insurance?
Because they can't get insurance.
Wow.
And that's the whole coast of, coastal
It's going to
areas
be
of
all
Florida.
high rent districts, isn't it?
It's
The
really
coastal,
it's
yeah.
really bad, and the almost the entire coast of the Gulf. Most properties owned by Donald Trump in Florida, of which there's a bunch,
All coastal properties on all of our coasts.
and
I mean,
properties along the Mississippi River.
This isn't poor people.
No, this is not poor people. This is everybody.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that the Fed is getting involved in this. I could just see Donald Trump reacting to this because he already doesn't like the Fed. But the Fed is getting involved, and they're saying, look, people, this is happening faster than we had thought. You better get ready.
Well, what they're saying here is this is not hypothetical.
Yeah.
The risks are here.
Yes.
We have to deal with them.
Well, Hurricane Harvey was not a hypothesis. It was something that happened.
And
Hurricane Maria
and it
was not.
pretty bad thing that
Yeah,
happened.
and
It
you
just
just go
sat there.
down the list. That's right. And there was an article today, by the way, about climate change, a study that was done. People were saying, wait a minute, these hurricanes don't seem to move as fast as they used to.
I think we'll touch base on that in this show.
Okay.
Further on down.
I will withhold comment for a
Yeah.
little bit. We are up to Sunday, November 10th, and we have an item from RTE.ie, which is a website in Ireland.
In Ireland, it is. Toll of climate change on Greenland's icebergs is unnerving.
Oh, man. The tallest icebergs in the world were towering in front of me, pristine and glistening in the Arctic sunshine. Obviously, I'm using somebody else's words. It felt unnerving to be near them, however. The tallest icebergs in front of us were about 80 meters high. 80 meters is a lot.
About 250 feet.
Yeah, I think more than that, actually.
bit more than that.
more. And the icebergs of Disco Bay were once double that height. So the icebergs are getting shorter.
Quite a bit shorter. Well, this Irish reporter was there 2006.
Yes.
He's just gone back there. And
Yes.
this is him speaking.
That's right.
Okay, and he's amazed at
Yeah.
the difference in the 10 years, 12 years since he's been there.
I'm amazed at the difference.
This dramatic change has happened in living memory.
Yes.
That's what he says.
And-
the entire Arctic region is warming faster than the rest of the world.
Well,
Icebergs are shrinking and the sea ice is disappearing.
and unfortunately, what we're seeing more and more is that climate change is happening far faster than it was expected to happen.
That's just what it said.
There are
climate
things-
change in general and Arctic regions is happening faster than that.
There are things happening today that were not expected to happen until 2080. So in some respects, we're 60 years ahead of schedule. And that is disturbing. Okay,
Well, we got another picture coming
we
up
do
here.
indeed. We are still on November 10th,
Where
and
is
we
that
have a
picture?
picture of
Oh, here we
Elizabeth
go.
Ryan looking at an apple tree. And this is from CNBC.
Whoop. I forgot to double click that thing. There she is. We're fighting for our lives. U.S. apple farmers endure major crop and profit losses as the climate changes.
Fruit growers like Elizabeth Ryan are trying to find ways to cope with warmer winters and unprecedented heat, rain, and drought. But climate change has become an impossible financial burden for many farmers. And part of this is also unexpected cold, because
It's changing everything.
everything is changing.
They're getting unexpected warmth in January, which
Yes.
is screwing things up completely.
Opens up the flowers.
And unexpected cold this time of year,
Yeah,
which is freezing the apples.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff.
it's pretty crazy.
Well-
And yeah, go ahead.
There's three parts there. Climate change is posing an existential threat to the precarious lives of farmers across the country.
All
Apple
kinds.
farmers are experimenting with different crops, growing tactics, and technology to cope.
Yes.
And between 2012 and 2017, more than 2,000 farms closed in New York State alone.
2,000 farms in New York State closed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, I got a connection to apple farms
Yeah?
in the Hudson Valley.
Yeah?
There's a lot of them.
Yes.
Okay, between Kingston and Albany on the west side of the river. It's almost all you see.
Really?
And one of my buddies from college owned an apple farm.
Uh-huh.
I never visited it, but we used to call him Joe Mott's after Mott's apple juice. But there's a lot of apple farmers, and it was a good living. They made a good living down there. I'm sure they
a
still
couple
are.
of counties in Illinois where it's practically apples. And
Well, I'll touch base on that.
Yeah,
New
go
York
ahead.
is the second largest apple producer in the U.S.
okay,
It might be Illinois as the first. I
don't
think
know.
it's Wisconsin.
I wouldn't be
The
surprised.
Hudson Valley has a long and robust history of apple growing, which is absolutely true. Elizabeth Ryan, who we just saw, she's farmed for 40 years. And in this picture, she's standing among her ruined golden supreme apple trees, recalling how they were snapped and toppled by Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
She took a bath, and she's debating, should she replace them with plums or grapes? She's not
Wow.
going out of farming, but she might be dropping apples.
Yeah.
So some farmers are turning to technology. This part is interesting, like giant wind machines that blow warm air onto the crops during cold spells.
Wow.
These are huge horizontal fans. I mean, you know, they're trying to cope.
They're trying to cope.
And unfortunately, it's hitting the smaller farmers who can't afford these wind machines.
Yep. Okay, we have an item from Forbes.
Oh, this one's interesting.
It is.
This is an interesting one. Even Trump can't keep coal companies from declaring bankruptcy.
The U.S. Energy Information Administration, or the EIA, has data that says, quote, between 2010 and the first quarter of 2019, U.S. power companies announced the retirement of more than 546 coal-fired power units, totaling about 102 gigawatts of generating capacity.
That's very significant.
102 gigawatts is more than the generating capacity of all of our nuclear plants combined.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, whenever you see that word giga, you know it's
It
big.
generally means big. That's right.
There's many charts in this. It's an interesting article. There's a lot of charts if you like charts.
Yes.
Okay. President Trump campaigned on bringing back the coal industry, and he did. However, coal companies are reporting disappointing financial results and filing for bankruptcy. The price of coal has fallen 38% from its recent high in October of 2018 and is back to 2016 prices. And coal plants continue to shut down. And they talk about 3 of them that are going for bankruptcy. Peabody Energy,
Yes.
okay, Black Jewel, and Murray Energy,
Yes.
which we've talked about on this show quite a bit.
Actually, we've talked about all 3 of them, but
We've talked most about Murray.
Murray and,
yeah.
and to
It's the
some
nation's
extent.
largest privately owned coal producer.
Yes.
And we've had pictures of Murray talking.
Yes. Okay, we're up to Monday, November 11th.
We are. This is an interesting picture coming up here.
Yep,
Let's
it
get it
is.
up. Aha, that looks like an iceberg.
It does.
Rising seas, melting ice, raging fires. Why didn't anybody warn us?
Why didn't anybody
Well,
warn
somebody
us?
did.
Wow. In a recent New York Times op-ed, Eugene Linden suggests reasons why scientists have been too conservative on climate change. There have been scientists who showed that rapid changes have happened in the past and can again, but they were regarded as on the fringe. This is from
Isn't that
Cleantechnica.
weird, huh? I'll
Well-
explain that a second here because I got it from the article.
Okay, go ahead.
Linden says scientists are often hamstrung by a perceived need to achieve consensus,
Yes.
believing that if they are not nearly unanimous in their findings, policymakers will find ways to dismiss their findings in favor of more politically acceptable alternatives. That's what's been happening.
Yeah.
What Linden doesn't mention, and this is significant, is the scientific community has been terrorized by stooges hired by the fossil fuel companies to sow fear and doubt among the public. They wouldn't do that.
No. I think that's exactly what's happened, and it's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
And I honestly think that people who have been doing that should be prosecuted.
They might very well be, because it's becoming quite aware of what they've been doing and who
Yeah.
they've been doing. As a matter of fact, I think they just started a lawsuit on exactly that.
Yeah.
I think a bunch of young people, kids,
Yes.
are suing that their right to future happiness has been
This
infringed.
is happening in a bunch of places in the United States. Okay, we have an item from The Guardian.
Yeah, this is sort of three parts in a row because we're going to touch base on the same phenomenon
Yes.
3 times. Australia's fires. Nation braces for the most dangerous bushfire week ever.
Fire chiefs in Australia have warned of the most dangerous bushfire week the nation has ever seen, saying New South Wales, the country's most populous state, faces an unprecedented, quote, catastrophic, end quote, fire day. New South Wales has 60 fires, 40 of which are out of control. Now, New South Wales was one. The other one was Queensland.
They're both on the East Coast.
They're both on the East Coast.
Queensland is on top.
Yep.
Then New South Wales is about the equivalent from maybe Virginia to Florida.
Yeah, well,
And then
below them is
Victoria, which is maybe Florida, their equivalent of Florida.
Yeah, but
This is where most of the people in Australia live.
all of them are big. I think New South Wales is probably twice the size of Texas.
These are, by our standards, very
They're
large
huge.
states.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Tasmania is I think,
Well,
the
it's small, it's
smallest
an
state, and it's about twice the size of New England. Anyway,
Well, you look at the map, it looks small, but it's big.
this is something that's just been coming back and coming back and coming back in the news. They had at one time 50 out of control fires. And if you see pictures of these fires, they're scary. They're really scary.
Well, they're not forest fires like we have because they don't have that many trees, but they're bush fires.
They're bush fires, but you know what, Tom?
They're dangerous.
They have got into the forests. And there was one guy, I remember this guy, and I forget who he was, but he was in a position of some authority, and he said he almost fell out of his chair when he saw that the fire had reached this one particular forest, because it's a tropical rainforest. Tropical rainforests
They're not supposed to burn.
No, they are not. And of course, on top of everything else, a lot of the forest, in what forest there is eucalyptus, which burns like matches, you know.
Yeah. Well, he's talking about a catastrophic rating, which we'll touch on again below.
Yep.
There's a quote here, and this is what's going on.
Yeah.
We are so dry in this country. We haven't had rain for years in some places. All the dams and creeks and rivers are dry, and we need to look at what we're going to do about that in the future. To deny climate change is a very ill-informed and uneducated way of looking at things. And we have the worst of our fire season still ahead of us. We're not even in the summer yet. Bingo.
Okay.
You read this before.
I did, actually, yes. Okay, we have a flood in Mississippi.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a change of scene here.
Yep.
Where'd the flood picture go?
It's down there. There it is. You can click on it. Go up.
I'm not looking at a picture of a flood.
No, oh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
I accidentally put it back.
Whoop, I clicked it twice. There we go.
There you go.
From dryness, we go to a flood in Missouri.
Yes. Inside Climate News.
From the Inside Climate News. As climate change threatens Midwest cultural identity, cities test ways to adapt. And that's what they're talking about. No more ice fishing. Well, that's just what you're going to say, isn't it?
Think of Minnesota with almost no ice fishing. Wow, what a thing. Missouri as hot and dry as Texas. And communities on rivers where catastrophic floods happen almost every year instead of every few generations. This, scientists warn, is the future if emissions continue as they are.
Well, the way we live and the way we manage resources is going to need to change.
Sure
we have
is.
to listen to the scientists. That's a quote.
Yep.
This approach would not be affordable or politically viable in many places. And they're talking about Rochester in Minnesota now.
Yep.
Rochester, with a population of about 115,000, has a thriving healthcare industry led by the Mayo Clinic and a voter base that is predisposed to trust science. And that's what this article is about, what happens in this particular town. And
yeah.
it's important in Minnesota because their way of life could be changing.
Life is
big time.
Seriously threatened. You know, you can't hunt moose in Minnesota, I've been told, either, because of the problems they've had because of climate change.
You can't hunt?
Can't hunt moose.
Well, we can't hunt moose.
Yeah. Moose all over the United States, moose are in trouble.
Yeah.
And that trouble is directly associated.
Ticks, isn't it?
Ticks that are bleeding the moose to death. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, November 12th, with an item from NBCnews.com.
Yeah, most destructive hurricanes are hitting the U.S. more often. And I had trouble with this one. I couldn't copy it.
Oh, really?
I got the same article from Associated Press, so I got
okay.
it. But I could not. I could pick it up. I could read it, but I couldn't download it to make my own notes.
Big destructive hurricanes are hitting the United States 3 times more frequently than they did a century ago, according to a study.
That's interesting.
It is. 247 hurricanes that hit the U.S. since 1900. Researchers found the top 10% of hurricanes were happening 3.3 times more frequently.
So the hurricanes are getting bigger, and the big ones are happening more often.
That's right.
And they say here Harvey's destructive footprint was 30 times larger than the average.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Harvey, that was a pretty destructive hurricane. It just hung over Houston for
and it was
a week.
Second 500-year flood in Houston in 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. Or maybe it was the first in 2 years. But
they got, I forget how much rain in Houston.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I don't think anybody's ever gotten that much rain in the U.S.
If you could find somebody who's outside of a 500-year flood zone who died in that, and I have no doubt that you could point at that person and say that person was killed by climate change.
I think you could. I think you make a very good case.
Yes.
For that.
Okay.
Let's move along. We got an interesting picture.
We're still on November 12th. We've got a picture from the BBC. This is an interesting article.
This is an interesting picture, an interesting article. That's a bunch of Formula One cars.
Yep, in 2018.
That's not Watkins Glen.
I don't know where that is.
No, it's not, because I used to go to Watkins Glen for the Formula One race every year.
Really?
The cars were different then. They were more like regular cars.
Yes.
There was one guy, he was a Dutchman. He was a count. And he drove it. He was in this race with an old Porsche with a license plate on. He never won anything, but he went every year.
Wow.
Count something, or I forget his name.
What do you got for a title, Tom?
Formula One launches a plan to become carbon neutral by 2030.
How are they going to do that?
Oh, they're going to tell us.
Formula One has launched a plan to become carbon neutral by 2030. The intention is to wipe out the carbon footprint of activity at the racetracks, including road and air transport of staff and equipment to the events. F1 says it will offset any emissions that remain that cannot be cut.
Well, they got pretty good plans. I got some interesting stuff about what they're going to do. All events will be sustainable. They're going to eliminate single-use plastics. These are like, coffee cups and stuff like that. Waste will be reused, recycled, and composted, and all gas will have a biofuel content of at least 10%. Now, this is an aside. I didn't notice that Formula One engines are the most efficient car engines in the world.
Really?
Delivering more power and using less fuel, and hence CO2, than any other car engine.
Wow.
And then the article says how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. If you
Okay.
got the time, read it, because it's interesting.
Our next item is from CNN,
Yeah, it is that.
and it's more about bushfires in Australia.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. This is part 2 of a 3-part series.
Right.
Australia's deadly bushfires bring threat of long and dangerous day ahead.
2 Australian states are bracing for a day of catastrophic risk as firefighters battle over 100 deadly active bushfires.
Gotten from 60 to 100 already, hasn't
Well, it actually
they
went to
added another
150.
state. 150.
150.
Wow.
Clouds of smoke can be seen as far away as New Zealand. Queensland and New South Wales have declared states of emergency. I want to point out that if you're in New Zealand and you're seeing smoke from Australia,
That's pretty far away.
that's like sitting here in Brattleboro and seeing smoke from a fire in Kansas City.
Yeah, that's about appropriate. That's about that distance. Yep.
I actually checked that. I wanted to find out
believe it,
something
yeah.
that was accurate, and this is absolutely nightmarish.
This is an interesting article.
Yeah.
There's this one. Well, CNN usually does a good job anyhow, but this is one of the better ones. There's 25 pictures.
Right.
Okay. There's a 2-minute video on the fire. Okay, you can see the fire in the video, and it says as of Tuesday, just in New South Wales, 57 fires were burning,
Yeah.
and there's probably more happening now.
Yep. And we haven't got to summer yet. Okay, we are up to Wednesday, November 13th, and we
There's
have a
another
picture
coming up.
which I can't figure anything about that picture. It just looks absolutely weird to me.
Well, I can tell you what's going on. It's a bird's eye view.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay, they're looking at the top of a mountainside that they took off to get coal.
Okay.
I think the black things that you're looking at are still coal.
Okay.
Okay, and the blue things are the tailings ponds, and that's what this story is all
man.
about. They're
Okay.
dumping all of their
Tailings.
in those blue ponds, which, if you notice, they're going down in the river.
Yes.
They're going down below, and they're infecting the rivers down
This
there.
is frightening. Okay, this is from Clean Technica.
And it's called a coal slurry pond in West Virginia. And it says the proposed new rule would amp up the EPA's war on science.
A new rule proposed by the EPA would upend decades of scientific research, studies that have confirmed that air pollution leads to shortened lifespans or that mercury impairs brain function in young children by requiring all that confidential data be made public.
That sounded kind of confusing to me, but they
What it
explained
means
how.
is if you're going to say, this child, we have a child here whose brain has been damaged by exposure to mercury, you can't do that anymore. You have to say, Freddie Smith, who lives at 110 Wilmot Avenue in Haberdash, Wisconsin, has a brain that was damaged by mercury. You've got to be specific. You do not protect people.
So nobody's going to do it. It's going to be
What
too
can you
complicated.
do?
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah.
So they're doing that to hobble
That's
scientific
exactly what
research.
they're doing.
And
It sounds like the opposite of what they're doing.
It is absolutely outrageous that they would attempt to do something like this. They're attempting to use people's lives, use people's privacy as a way of circumventing their safety.
Well, it's just what they say from the article. This is a full frontal assault on reason that appears rational on the surface, but it's just another way for companies that fund extreme views against protecting the environment to get their way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a game they're playing.
It's a game.
Yeah,
It's
with
a
us.
very deadly
We're
game, and the
losers.
people who are doing this should be held accountable, in my opinion.
I think they should be.
And in my opinion, that means going to jail for a long time.
Yeah.
This is outrageous. This is
these
absolutely.
kinds of people
this
never
is,
go to jail.
Not necessarily.
I hope
One
so.
thing you could do with some people would be to ship them to Brussels and let them stand in trials for crimes against humanity.
Ooh.
I think there are people in the United States who are definitely guilty of that, and
Yeah?
they deserve to have that kind of treatment
Yep.
because they are killing people. Should we go on to something
Let's
else?
move on. We got
Okay.
another one coming up from
We
The Guardian.
We have an item from The Guardian.
Climate change, do more now or risk catastrophe.
That's
warns the-
catastrophe.
Catastrophe. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Warns the Energy Agency.
The world's existing climate policies will not be enough to end the upward march of record energy emissions, rising beyond 2040 without a grand coalition of governments and investors, according to the International Energy Agency. In 2018, we set emissions set a record. This is from The Guardian. What do you have on that as a thing?
Comment?
I've got things to say
The
about
deep
this.
disparity between words and action risks failing to cap global temperatures. In order to be in line with the Paris targets, there is a need for huge efforts in pushing clean energy technologies.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say about it?
Well, you remember, it's even conceivable that every single person watching this show, except for an occasional toddler, is aware of the fact that about a year ago, a UN agency said we've got until 2030 to cut emissions by 45% or we will not be able to reach 1.5 degree rise.
Yeah, I remember them
Okay.
saying that.
Now, what happened after that was scientists sat down, they said, how much time have we got to make the plans to issue the ordinances and the legislate the laws and all of this stuff? How much time have we got? Okay, let's look at this and see how much time is it going to take to implement those things once they're established.
So it's going to take a long time just to establish the guidelines.
And they said, we've got to get through that guideline legislative stage within 18 months. 18 months of 6 months ago. That is by the end of 2020.
It's
We
not gonna
have to
happen.
do it with Donald Trump or possibly a replacement in the White House. We have to do it with the current Senate. Is it going to happen? Okay, if it isn't going to happen, then we've got a very few, a reduced number of choices. We can decide to do it on a local level, across the nation. We're going to do everything we can. Every town we can get, every city we can get into action must be in action. We have to tackle this ourselves because the federal government
Isn't
can't
gonna do
do it. Cannot do
They
it.
can't do it.
Not if it's going to be done gracefully. Okay, let's say that, Elizabeth Warren or Jay Inslee, who's dropped out of the race, or somebody who's got those same standards is elected. Okay, they can go back and do what FDR did in 1942 and say, okay, automobile industry, you're not allowed to sell cars anymore. Not even the ones that are on the dealers. You're going to have to do something else. And by the way, we have an order for you. We have an order that we can give you so you can make some money. Design and build electric motors and battery systems to go into the existing cars because we're going to be putting on a 3-gallon per week ration for personal vehicles, which is what they did in the Second World War.
Exactly like that.
Absolutely, that's what they did. They even rationed gasoline for municipal vehicles.
Did they really?
The police cars didn't get. They had 6 gallons a week for the police cars.
I remember you had a sticker in your windshield, an A or a B, and you could only buy gas on certain days depending upon your sticker.
This was, that's what I would call a not very graceful approach. But that may be what we need. Yeah, it may be what we need. And in addition to that, they could say, okay, look, we're going to have a reduced amount of home heating oil available every year. Every year, we're going to reduce the amount that's for sale by 10%.
And the price is going to go up.
Yeah.
Naturally.
So we reduce that amount by 10% from this year's amount, and by 10% of this year's amount for the next year, and by 10% of this year's amount for the next year, and get rid of all of it in 10 years.
Could happen.
They could do that.
They could do it.
But if, this is the kind of thing that we're establishing as a future. Okay, I'm sorry, we have one more item to come up, and there's a really nice picture here. And this is from the BBC.
And that is a kookaburra. Too bad we don't have a sound effect for the kookaburra.
They laugh.
Yeah, they make a funny sound.
They make a funny sound.
Australia bushfires, fresh warnings in Queensland and New South Wales. This is part 3.
Yes, of the 3 that you were talking about. Australian authorities warn that massive bushfires will continue to pose a threat despite the catastrophic conditions easing. So they have eased a little bit. There's still, I don't know how many, 100 bushfires out of control, but things are getting better. We've got the worst of the season still ahead of us as we head into summer. The New South Wales Rural Fire Services Commissioner said.
Well, as you already said, 150 fires are still burning in New South Wales and Queensland. No significant rain is expected.
Which means that the easing conditions eased because the wind got lighter.
Well, Australia's fire season has grown longer and more intense due to climate change. In 2018 and 2017 were Australia's 3rd and 4th hottest years on record.
Ever. Yeah.
And they explain what a catastrophic fire is, because they refer to a catastrophic. The highest point in Australia's 6-point fire danger scale results from high temperatures, strong winds, and dry ground, which is exactly what they have. Fires starting under these conditions will threaten lives. Homes cannot be defended from catastrophic fires. Even homes that are built to withstand fires can't stand a catastrophic fire.
They have a term spotting, which is the distance at which a fire in one place will put up an ember that can come down in another place and start a new fire. And they said, I forget what it was something like 10, 12 kilometers, which means like 6 or 8 miles.
These things they can jump, they can spread fast.
They can jump fire breaks that are 6 or 8 miles across. Okay, we're at the end of the show.
We are that.
And we have to say, have a perfectly lovely week.
You'll come back and see it now, you hear?